From Nico Ali Walsh stepping in to carry the greatest torch, to Amir Tyson building a luxury streetwear brand, to Sugar Ray Leonard's private estate battles, boxing bloodlines carry heavy weight. But the final entry takes a sharp turn, the unrecognized daughter of a legendary champion who became a leading authority in deep-sea marine biology, and the truth behind her rise changes everything. The Ali dynasty, 9 children, and a name that weighs a ton. Muhammad Ali had 9 children, 9, from 4 marriages and 6 women, and every single one of them grew up knowing that their last name, or their connection to that last name, was both a gift and a weight they'd carry forever. Let's be clear about what that means in practice. You are the child of the most famous human being who ever lived, the man who beat Sonny Liston, who refused the Vietnam draft, who lit the Olympic torch in Atlanta with a hand shaking from Parkinson's. That is your father. Now go live your life. The eldest of the Ali children is Maryam, born in 1968, known as May. She came out of the gate as a rapper in her early 20s and actually released an album, The Introduction, through Scotty Bros Records. That's not a footnote. She was out there grinding in an industry that doesn't care what your father does. Later in life, Maryam pivoted hard into advocacy. She became a spokesperson for the Parkinson Alliance, using her platform to raise awareness about the disease that ultimately claimed her father. Watching your parents' illness define your calling. That's a specific kind of grief that turns into purpose. Right behind Maryam came the twins, Rashida and Jamila, born in 1970, both from Ali's second marriage to Khalila. Jamila graduated from the University of Illinois, married, had children of her own, and quietly dedicated herself to giving back. She actively donates to underprivileged families in Chicago through the Ephraim Bahar Cultural Center. Not flashy, not chasing the spotlight, just doing the work. Rashida went a different direction. She became a writer and public speaker, and she has a son named Nico Ali Walsh, who is currently fighting professionally. We will get to Nico, because his story is something else entirely. Then there's Muhammad Ali Jr., born in 1972, the son, the only son with that full name, at least among the recognized children. You'd think being the male heir of the most iconic male athlete in history would come with certain advantages, and it did, but not without cost. Ali Jr. has spoken openly about battling drug addiction in his adult years. He described his relationship with his father as more brotherly than paternal. The two could talk openly about anything, according to him. But the road was hard. He ended up broke. He ended up struggling. And at one point, his story hit the news not for triumph, but for difficulty. But here's the thing about Ali Jr. He didn't stay down. He built the Muhammad Ali Legacy Continues organization, which focuses on anti-bullying work and self-defense. He was the subject of a documentary, My Father Muhammad Ali, The Untold Story, released in 2023, where he finally got to tell his version of growing up in the shadow of greatness. And then in January 2025, he launched the Muhammad Ali Legacy Continued Foundation in the UK, with a mission to raise awareness about Parkinson's disease in the Black community, specifically pushing for better representation of Black and minority ethnic groups in medical trials. He's carrying his father's fight, just in a different arena. Now there are the daughters from the other side of Ali's complicated personal life. Her father reportedly called her Madam President for her intelligence. She built herself into a fashion designer, an author, a real estate agent, and a public speaker. She lost her father in 2016, was there with him in his final moments. That same month, the two of them were honored with the inaugural Visionary Leadership and Impact Award at the Young Audiences Arts for Learning Annual Benefit Gala in New York, recognized for decades of humanitarian work and commitment to justice reform. Life going forward, not just looking back. Mia Ali, born in 1972 from Ali's relationship with Patricia Harvell, has been a brand ambassador for her sister's wellness venture, Lila Ali Lifestyle. She's a mother. She's held managerial roles across different companies. And in a 2022 interview, she spoke about how her father made a point of making each of his children feel special. No small feat when you have 9 kids scattered across the country with different mothers. Ali apparently brought them all together every summer. Every summer. Whatever you think about his personal life, the man showed up for his kids in the ways he knew how. Hana Ali, born in 1976 from his relationship with Veronica Porche, wrote a memoir in 2018 titled At Home with Muhammad Ali. a full account of what it felt like to grow up inside that household, to watch her father be both a god to the world and a flawed, loving human being at home. And then there's Asad Amin, Ali's adopted son, with his fourth wife Lonnie, who has lived a largely private life away from cameras. He is perhaps the one Ali child who most successfully stayed out of the orbit of the family mythology. But none of the Ali children, not one, has matched the cultural footprint of the youngest daughter, Laila Ali, the one who actually put on gloves. Laila Ali made her professional boxing debut in 1999. She was 21, and from the moment she stepped into a ring, the world wanted to reduce her to a gimmick. The great man's daughter playing at being a fighter. She answered that noise the only way that makes sense in boxing. She hit people hard. She built an undefeated record of 24 wins and 0 losses, with 21 of those wins coming by knockout. She held the WBC, WIBA, and IBA female super middleweight titles. She's widely considered one of the greatest female professional boxers of all time. When she retired in 2007, she didn't disappear. She authored books, launched a fitness and lifestyle brand, hosted television programs including The Biggest Loser, appeared on numerous media platforms, and in 2025, she joined the Netflix boxing broadcast team and the show Chef Grudge Match. There was even a wild moment in 2025 when Claressa Shields, the current queen of women's boxing, called Layla out for a comeback fight. Layla's response: she'd consider it for $15 to $20 million. That is not a woman hiding from her legacy. That is a woman who knows exactly what she's worth. And then there's the death hoax. In 2025, a Facebook rumor spread claiming Laila Ali had died in childbirth. She got on Instagram and shut it down fast, telling people she was fine and healthy. The fact that a death hoax about the daughter of Muhammad Ali can spread globally in hours, that tells you everything about the weight of that name. Now let's talk about Nico Ali Walsh, because this is where the Ali story bends into something extraordinary. Nico is Rashida's son, Muhammad Ali's grandson. He's a professional middleweight boxer who turned pro in August 2021 with a first-round TKO, and he has been grinding through the middleweight ranks ever since, building a professional record of 12 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw as of late 2025. His mother Rashida has been publicly cautious about his career. She watched her own father's hands tremble and his speech slow as Parkinson's took hold over decades, and she knows what repeated head trauma can do to a human being. She delayed her son's involvement in high-impact sports until high school, and she set up baseline neurological testing before she'd allow it. That is a mother trying to love her child without letting her grief become his cage. In August 2025, Nico participated in an event called Thrilla in Manila, the 50th anniversary, a commemorative card honoring the 1975 classic between his grandfather Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. He fought at the Araneta Coliseum in Quezon City, Philippines, the same venue as the original fight, and boxed to a draw, the loop of history closing in on itself. A young man fighting in the same building where his grandfather fought for something that changed boxing forever. Whatever happens next in Nico's career, that moment already belongs to him. The Ali family is also bound to one more story, the story of George Foreman, who died in March 2025 at the age of 76. Foreman was the man Ali beat in the Rumble in the Jungle in 1974, perhaps the most famous fight in the sport's history. And Foreman's own family story, particularly his children, runs parallel to the Ali saga in fascinating ways. But that's a story for later in this video. Because right now, we need to talk about the other family that runs through the veins of boxing's DNA. A family where the sport wasn't just a legacy. It was a literal dynasty passed down from father to son, from trainer to fighter, from prison yards back to gold. The Mayweathers. Part 2. The Mayweather Machine. A boxing dynasty built on blood and broken bones. Floyd Mayweather Jr. went 50-0. 50 professional fights, 0 losses. He retired with championships across 5 weight divisions, a net worth that some estimates place around $500 million, and a cultural presence that turned boxing into appointment television for a generation that barely followed the sport. He's by any measure one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. But here's what gets overlooked. Floyd Mayweather Jr. didn't come from a boxing family. He came from a boxing army. His father, Floyd Mayweather Sr., was a professional boxer. His uncle, Roger Mayweather, held the WBA and the Ring Super Featherweight titles, the WBC Light Welterweight title, multiple titles across a career that ran from 1981 to 1999. Another uncle, Jeff Mayweather, also boxed professionally and is still working as a trainer today. As of 2025, he's the trainer for Pakistani boxer Muhammad Wasim. These are not peripheral figures. These men shaped the sport, and they all helped shape Floyd Jr. Floyd Sr.'s record was 28 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw. He fought Sugar Ray Leonard in 1978 and got knocked out. That's not a stain. Leonard was one of the best fighters on the planet. But what happened 4 months after that fight tells you something about the chaos that ran through that family. Floyd Sr. was shot in the leg in a family dispute. That gunshot virtually ended his career. He went on to become a trainer, but his path was interrupted again when he was imprisoned for 5.5 years on a drug-dealing conviction, meaning he missed more than a decade of his own son's early development. Floyd Jr. has said he basically raised himself. That's not just a tough guy quote. It's a documented reality. His father was absent, incarcerated. His mother dealt with her own struggles. He grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, learning to fight in large part from his uncle Roger, who became his primary trainer through most of the early and mid-career. The relationship between father and son turned into one of boxing's great ongoing soap operas. In 2006, Mayweather Sr. came back briefly. Then Roger took back over. Then, in 2013, Floyd Sr. resumed training his son for the final stretch of the career, which Floyd Jr. later said was partly because Roger's health was declining. The tension between those two men, father and son, played out publicly for years. Their sparring, not in the ring, but in interviews, in documentary footage, in public statements, became part of the Mayweather legend. Floyd Sr. claiming credit, Floyd Jr. pushing back. Two men with the same name and the same blood, circling each other the way only a father and son can when love and resentment get tangled together over decades. And there's another thread in that family that never got enough attention. Roger Mayweather, the uncle, the trainer who guided Floyd through the majority of his title fights, was not just a championship-level boxer himself. He was the man inside Floyd's corner for fights against Oscar De La Hoya, against Shane Mosley, against Ricky Hatton. He was the architect of the shoulder roll defense that made Floyd nearly untouchable. Roger died in 2017. The year Floyd fought Conor McGregor and went 50-0. 3 of the biological children were born from his relationship with Josie Harris. Ayanna was born from his relationship with Melissa Brim. And those 2 names, Josie Harris and Melissa Brim, are not just names of women he was with. She was found unresponsive in her car. The cause of death was ruled an accidental overdose. She was 40 years old, and her death hit the Mayweather children, particularly the 3 born from that relationship, with a force that no amount of money or security could soften. Harris had been the woman at the center of Floyd's 2011 domestic violence conviction. She had spoken publicly about the abuse, and when she died, it left her children to sort out a grief that was already complicated before she was gone. Coraun, the eldest son, reportedly had a fractured relationship with his father for years. When Coraun was 11 years old, he called the police after witnessing Mayweather being violent toward his mother. That is not a footnote in a boxing story. That is a child trying to protect his mother. The arc of that relationship, the distance it created, and whatever steps have been taken since to rebuild it, is the kind of thing that doesn't get resolved in a press conference. Jarrah, the youngest of Floyd's children, publicly called her father out after Josie's death. On social media, she posted about going from a parent who put your happiness first to one who puts their own happiness first. She didn't name him directly. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. Jarrah has been vocal about her relationship with Floyd being strained, and it tracks. She grew up watching her mother's pain and watching the world celebrate the man who caused it. Fame doesn't erase what happened behind closed doors, and children remember. Then there's Iana, who appears to have the closest relationship with Floyd of all the children. She acknowledged in interviews that her father spoiled her with extravagant gifts growing up. In 2020, she was involved in a widely reported incident in Houston involving rapper NBA Youngboy's home, which led to legal trouble for her. He and Melissa Brim have been publicly seen spending time with the baby. Floyd, the doting grandfather. Whatever you make of the man's personal history, that image is real too. Zion, Floyd's other son, has been building a social media presence. Nearly 300,000 Instagram followers, partnerships with musicians and content creators. Davion Cromwell, the adopted son, has maintained a low profile, and the Mayweather family, for all its glamour and drama, keeps producing chapters. Because that's what happens when you combine that much money with that much unresolved history. But to understand the full shape of the Mayweather dynasty, you have to go back to how it started, with Floyd Sr. being trained by his father and teaching his son to punch as a toddler. 3 generations of fighters. 3 generations of men who expressed themselves with their fists and then tried to figure out who they were outside of that. Floyd Sr.'s career ended with a bullet wound. Roger's career ended, and he died before his nephew's greatest triumph. And Floyd Jr. built a billion-dollar machine on top of all of that inherited pain. The sport doesn't give back what it takes, but sometimes, just sometimes, it passes something on. A discipline, a drive, a refusal to stay down. And that refusal shows up not just in fighters, but in their children and their children's children. Which brings us to the Frasers, a family who wore their connection to boxing as both armor and anchor, and whose story contains one of the most unlikely plot twists in sports history. Part 3. Smokin' Joe's Kids. The Frasers and the Shadow of the Thriller. Joe Frazier grew up as the 12th child of Reuben and Dolly Frazier, a farming family in Beaufort, South Carolina, part of the Gullah community, descended from former slaves. They were poor, genuinely, structurally poor, relying on sharecropping and whatever else they could scrape together. His uncle Israel looked at young Joe one night and said that boy was going to be another Joe Louis. Joe filled a burlap sack with rags, corn cobs, a brick, and Spanish moss, hung it from an oak tree, and hid it for an hour every day for 6 or 7 years. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal origin story of one of the hardest punchers who ever lived. Frazier went on to win the 1964 Olympic gold medal, become undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and fight Muhammad Ali 3 times in what are still considered among the greatest sporting contests in history. He won the first one, the fight of the century, in March 1971, by unanimous decision over 15 rounds. He lost the second, and the third, the Thrilla in Manila in 1975, was so brutal that Ali later said it was the closest thing to dying that he'd ever known. Both men left pieces of themselves in that ring. Neither was ever quite the same. Frazier had 12 children total, though the number varies in different accounts. His most famous children in boxing circles were Marvis and Jacqui. Both of them followed their father into the ring. Both of them were trained by Joe himself. And both of their stories illustrate exactly what it means to carry a heavyweight legend's last name into a sport that doesn't hand out passes for bloodlines. Marvis Frazier was a serious heavyweight contender. Joe believed in him, trained him personally, got him to the level where he challenged Larry Holmes for the world heavyweight title in 1983. Holmes knocked him out in 1 round. That hurt, but Marvis got back up. He kept fighting. And then in 1986, he stepped into the ring with a 20-year-old Mike Tyson, who was not yet champion, but was already terrifying. Tyson stopped Marvis in the first round as well. 2 title-level fights. 2 first-round losses. The son never broke out of his father's shadow. That's how people put it at the time. But it's worth noting that most fighters in history never got within arm's reach of the championship level. Marvis got there, twice. The men who stopped him were just better than everyone. After his career, Marvis took over the Smokin' Joe Frazier Inc., businesses his father's commercial enterprises, and ran them alongside his sister, Natasha. He became his father's legacy keeper in a practical, operational sense. Not just a name on a wall. an actual steward of what Joe built. Jackie Fraser lied became a WEBA World Light Heavyweight Champion. Joe trained her too. And here's where boxing history produces one of its most poetically charged moments. In 2001, Jackie Fraser lied fought Layla Ali, the daughter of Joe Fraser versus the daughter of Muhammad Ali. The rivalry that defined an era, carried forward one generation, played out between two women in a ring. Layla won by majority decision. Jackie fought her hard, 8 rounds. And the fact that it happened at all, that those two women, with those two last names, stood across from each other in a professional boxing ring, is one of those things that makes sports feel genuinely larger than life. Joe Fraser died in November 2011, just weeks after being diagnosed with liver cancer. He was 67 years old. His private funeral was held at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church in Philadelphia. Muhammad Ali attended. Don King was there. Larry Holmes, Magic Johnson, Dennis Rodman, the men who had shaped an era of sport, gathered to send off one of their own. And Floyd Mayweather Jr., who was at that point the biggest active star in boxing, paid for Fraser's funeral services personally. That detail doesn't appear in highlight reels or countdown lists, but it happened, a champion paying his respects in the most concrete way possible. The statue of Joe Fraser that now stands in Philadelphia wasn't easy to bring into existence. The original sculptor, Lawrence Nowlin, died unexpectedly before finishing it. Philadelphia sculptor Stephen Lane ultimately created the statue, which was erected in 2015. That's not just an administrative footnote, it's a symbol of how difficult it can be to properly honor a man whose greatness was never fully recognized while he was alive. Fraser spent decades feeling that Ali got all the credit, all the love, all the mythologizing. His family lived with that bitterness, and now there's a bronze figure of him standing in the city he made his home. Derek Fraser, one of Joe's younger sons, made his own kind of television history when he appeared on Big Brother Season 23. That's a long way from the Beaufort Fields, where his father grew up, and from the gyms of Philadelphia, where Joe forged his career. Derek's appearance on a nationally televised reality show is, in its own way, the family continuing to find new arenas, new ways of being seen, new stages for the Fraser name. But the Fraser family story keeps circling back to its gravitational center, the rivalry with the Alice. And that rivalry, as we've already seen, didn't end when Joe and Muhammad stopped fighting each other. Jackie and Layla brought it into the new century. Nico Ali Walsh, fighting at the Thrilla in Manila anniversary event in 2025, brought it into this decade. The Frasers and the Alice, two families whose stories are permanently stitched together by those 3 fights, those 6 rounds, all that pain. Joe's legacy inside boxing circles has grown substantially since his death. His overall record was 32 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw, with 27 of those wins by knockout. He won 73% of his fights by KO, compared to 60% for Ali and 84% for Foreman. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. And despite spending years feeling overshadowed, his place in the sport's history is now firmly, inarguably at the top. What his children inherited from all of that is complicated. The money was modest compared to the glory. Fraser, at various points, struggled financially despite his fame. His gym in Philadelphia became both a training facility and a community anchor. His children inherited not a fortune, but a name, a work ethic, and a story. And in boxing, sometimes that's more than enough to build a life on. Now there's one more fighter from that golden heavyweight era whose family story can't be skipped. A man who was the most physically dominant presence the sport has ever seen, who reinvented himself completely after his career, and who left behind one of the most unusual family situations in the history of sports. George Foreman, the man who knocked down Fraser 6 times in 2 rounds in 1973, the man Ali beat in Zaire in 1974, the man who came back from a decade-long retirement to win the heavyweight championship again at 45, making him the oldest heavyweight champion in history, and the man who named 5 of his sons George. Yes, 5 sons, all named George. George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, and George VI, plus a George that appears in his daughter's name, Georgetta, Foreman has explained this choice over the years by saying he wanted his sons to have something of him, always, that his name would be with them even when he wasn't. Others have called it eccentric. Some people have called it something less generous. But it's real, and it's one of those choices that turns a boxing legend's family into something that sounds like a story someone made up. Part 4. George Foreman, Oscar de la Hoya, and the children who had to find themselves. George Foreman had 12 children, 12 from multiple relationships. 5 of his sons are named George. His daughter, Frida Foreman, was a professional boxer who retired with a record of 5 wins and 1 loss. She died in March 2019 at the age of 42 in an apparent suicide. Foreman announced her death with a statement saying his beloved daughter had passed, asking for prayers and privacy. The loss was devastating. A man who had spent his entire life in a sport that teaches you to absorb punishment, finally hit with something no training could prepare him for. George Foreman died in March 2025 at 76. His career story is one of the most extraordinary in human history. He was the ferocious destroyer who obliterated Frasers and was supposed to do the same to Ali in Zaire. And Ali used the rope-a-dope to exhaust him and stop him in the 8th round. That loss sent Foreman into a depression that lasted years. He became a preacher in Houston. He opened a youth center. He disappeared from boxing for a decade. And then, in 1994, at 45 years old, he knocked out Michael Moorer to become heavyweight champion of the world again. It remains one of the most improbable comebacks in sports history. After boxing, Foreman became one of the most recognizable commercial pitchmen in American history. The George Foreman grill sold more than 100 million units. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated in the hundreds of millions. And his children, all 12 of them, including those 5 Georges, inherited a complicated financial and emotional estate. The son who has been most publicly visible in recent years is George Foreman III, known as Monk, who became a professional boxer himself and later a trainer and promoter. He's been active in building his own boxing career and gym infrastructure. Another George, George IV, also competed as a boxer. The family kept getting pulled back to the sport, like iron filings toward a magnet. But beyond the boxers, the Foreman children include individuals who have worked to step out of that shadow entirely. Some have become entrepreneurs. Some have maintained private lives. The story of what 5 boys named George do when their father is one of the most famous human beings on the planet is the kind of long-form saga that families carry quietly, without press releases or championship belts. Frida's story sits at the dark center of it all. She boxed, she won, she retired, and then she struggled. The details of what she went through in the years leading up to her death are not fully public. What is public is that she died at 42, and that her father, the most physically powerful man of his generation, the man who had stared down every opponent the heavyweight division could offer, had to bury his daughter. That is the price this sport sometimes asks for. Not from the fighter, through the Frasers destruction in Kingston, Jamaica, through the Zaire loss to Ali, through the preaching years and the grill and the unlikely comeback, all the way to a quiet exit at 76. His children now carry the name George Foreman into a world where that name still means something extraordinary, and where what it means is still being negotiated. Now let's move to a fighter who represents a different kind of legacy. Not the blunt, bulldozing power of the heavyweight division, but the craftiness, the charisma, and the complicated personal life of a man who boxed in 6 weight classes and won world titles in all 6. Oscar de la Hoya, the Golden Boy, whose family story is one of the most emotionally layered in the sport. De la Hoya won an Olympic gold medal in 1992 in Barcelona. He did. He held it up at the Games and dedicated it to her. That moment, a 19-year-old boy standing on an Olympic podium with a gold medal in grief, set the emotional template for everything that came after. Oscar de la Hoya boxed for his mother, and that is the kind of origin story that never lets go of a man. Oscar has 6 children from multiple relationships. His son, Oscar Gabriel de la Hoya, born from his marriage to actress Millie Korecher, became a boxer himself, turning professional in the mid-2010s. Oscar Sr. was his trainer. The father-son boxing dynamic, played out in the same tradition as the Frasers and the Mayweathers, the son carrying the name into the ring, the father watching from the corner, hoping and terrified in equal measure. But Oscar de la Hoya's own life outside the ring has been publicly turbulent. He's been open about battles with substance abuse. He entered a rehabilitation facility in 2011 and has spoken about the demons that followed him out of the sport. The transition from being the most commercially successful boxer in the world, the man who headlined pay-per-view events that broke records, to being a private person dealing with the wreckage of a career's worth of pressure, is never seamless. For Oscar, it was genuinely hard. He's also been the subject of public controversies and legal matters that got significant attention. Through it all, his children have had to navigate what it means to have a famous, complicated father. His daughter, Atiana de la Hoya, from a relationship with model Shanna Moakler, grew up in the public eye partly because of her stepfather, Travis Barker, and her step-siblings. She became a photographer and social media figure in her own right. That is the second-generation celebrity experience in concentrated form. Your father is a boxing legend, your stepfather is the drummer from Blink-182, and somehow you have to find out who you actually are. What all these families share: the Alice, the Mayweathers, the Frasers, the Foremans, the De La Hoyas, is that the sport produced men of extraordinary capability in a very narrow field. Men who became symbols and icons and myths while they were still alive and punching. And then those men had children who grew up inside that myth. Children who were never asked if they wanted to be part of it. Children who got the name without getting to choose what it meant. Some of them embraced it and went further than anyone expected. Laila Ali, undefeated. Nico Ali Walsh, still fighting, still trying to write his own chapter. Some of them tried to carry the torch and couldn't quite reach the same flame. Marvis Fraser, George Foreman III, Oscar de la Hoya's son, all men who trained hard and fought honestly, and were measured against a standard that was genuinely superhuman. And some of them stepped away from boxing entirely and built their own lives in different fields: film production, music, photography, fashion, advocacy, philanthropy. But there is one family we haven't fully gotten to yet. One whose story contains perhaps the most painful combination of wealth, dysfunction, tragedy, and redemption in the whole history of the sport. A family where the father went from champion of the world to broke to bankrupt to reborn, where the children came through chaos and kept going. A family where the sport's shadow didn't just create pressure. It created grief so raw that the man who had once eaten opponents for breakfast could barely speak about it. Mike Tyson's family, Part 5. The Tyson family, from the youngest champion ever to the children he raised through everything. Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history in 1986, at 20 years old. He was so physically dominant in those early years that the sport essentially had no answer for him. He lost his first mentor, Cus D'Amato, when D'Amato died in 1985, just before Tyson won the title. He was a 19-year-old kid who had just lost the father figure who had pulled him out of juvenile detention and pointed him toward greatness. That loss sat inside him and never fully left. Tyson has 7 children from 4 different women. One of those children died. And that fact, that single brutal fact, sits at the center of his family's story in a way that nothing else can move. His eldest child is Mikey Lorna Tyson, born in 1990. From a relationship with model Kimberly Scarborough. Mikey, who now goes by Mickey, has built a career as a plus-size model and has recently pushed into music, releasing her debut single Love Me Again in October 2024. Her father promoted the song on social media, calling her an incredible writer and singer. She came into the world during a period when Tyson was already consumed by the machinery of his career. He was absent from her early life. And then he was in prison from 1992 to 1995. When he came out, he made an effort to be more present. The damage was already done on some level, but the effort was real. His second child, Ramsey Tyson, was born in 1996 from his marriage to Monica Turner. Ramsey identifies as non-binary and transmasculine. They attended NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and graduated with a degree in film production. They've worked on major projects, contributing to the crew of Joker, the DC Comics film, and to the life and death of Marsha P. Johnson. not boxing, not the ring. Cinema. In a 2020 interview with LGBTQ publication Them, Ramsey spoke about their father's past misgendering of them, explaining that he doesn't mean it maliciously and that the two have only spoken briefly about gender identity. That is a child extending a grace that was not necessarily earned. It says something about Ramsey. It also says something about the distance that had to be traveled. Then there's Amir Tyson, also born from his relationship with Monica Turner in 1997. Amir didn't take the route to the ring. He became a sports broadcaster instead. And when his father came back for the Netflix fight against Jake Paul in November 2024, Amir was working the event as a commentator. He took to Instagram to express his excitement about being on the broadcast team for what he called the biggest and most viewed boxing fight of the 21st century. A son who can't quite leave the sport, but engages with it from behind the microphone rather than behind the gloves. Miguel Leon Tyson, born in 2002 from a relationship with Sol Xochitl, dropped the family name professionally and goes simply by Miguel Leon. He's a globe-trotting photographer and videographer based in Los Angeles. In September 2024, he partnered with Prince Jackson, son of Michael Jackson, to host a fundraiser for Heal Los Angeles, raising money for children in need. Two sons of two legends, using the weight of their names to try to do some good. It's not a coincidence that both of them found each other. They understand something specific about what it means to grow up as the child of a myth. And then there's Milan, born on Christmas Day 2008, from Tyson's current marriage to Lakeha Spicer. She's trained alongside Novak Djokovic. And in 2023, when Tyson walked the red carpet at the ESPYs with her, he told Entertainment Tonight that she seemed to think plenty of other people were cooler than him. He said that having a daughter had changed him, that he couldn't be who he used to be, and that things had to change. Milan is the version of Mike Tyson that the sport never got to see. A father who softened, who learned, who showed up. Morocco Tyson, the youngest, was born in January 2011 from the same marriage. He's been kept largely away from public attention. What we know is that he's exploring sports, tennis, golf, and that his father surprised him in 2022 by bringing Kevin Hart onto the Hot Boxin' podcast as a guest because Morocco was a huge fan. Mike posted about it on social media, clearly delighted to have done something that made his son's day. That is a Mike Tyson that the tabloid headlines don't always make room for. But we have to talk about Exodus, because not talking about her would be a dishonesty. Exodus Tyson was born in March 2005, also from the relationship with Sol Xochitl. She was 4 years old when, in May 2009, she was found with her neck caught in a cord attached to a treadmill at her mother's home in Phoenix. Her mother did CPR. Exodus was taken to the hospital. She didn't survive. She was 4 years old. Mike was in Las Vegas when it happened. He flew back to Phoenix immediately. The family released a statement saying there were no words to describe the loss of their beloved Exodus. Mike spoke to Oprah about it later that year. He talked about taking responsibility, about how his experience in rehab had taught him to process tragedy without anger, without the need to blame. He said he didn't know exactly how she died and that he didn't want to know. That is a man trying to survive an unimaginable thing and using every tool he'd acquired just to stay standing. The year 2009 was the year Tyson married Lakeha Spicer, days after Exodus died. The timing of that marriage, so close to that death, says something about how human beings sometimes reach for love in the ruins of grief. Tyson has said that his family means everything to him, that the children he has now, the ones who are alive, who are growing up, who are making music and playing tennis and taking photographs, are his biggest asset. He told Oprah, "I'm just fortunate that I have children by different women, and as a family, we're close. That's my biggest asset. We all love each other." The November 2024 fight against Jake Paul on Netflix drew 108 million viewers worldwide. It was one of the most watched sporting events in history. Tyson lost on a unanimous decision, and he admitted afterward to feeling somewhat depressed following the bout. But the fight made him a reported $20 million, and he used a significant portion of it to buy a new home in Delray Beach, Florida, a property with a private lake and a waterfall. His children were at the stadium that night. He had told the cameras before the fight that to his children, he was nobody. But that night, they'd find out their father was very special. He said that. And then he went in there and did 8 rounds with a man more than 3 decades younger. Whatever the scorecard said, his children watched him walk into that stadium at 58 years old and go to work. Not for money alone, not just for the sport, for them. To show them something about who their father was. Whether that lesson landed the way he intended is something only the Tyson kids can answer. But the gesture was real. The families of boxing legends are not simply appendages to the main event. They are the part of the story that keeps moving after the cameras turn off. After the final bell. After the championship belts are put in display cases, and the gym's close and the next generation of young men and women starts throwing combinations at bags hung from trees and garage rafters. The children of these men and the children of those children carry something that cannot be measured in knockouts or pay-per-view records. They carry the shape of a life that was built in a violent, beautiful, heartbreaking sport. And they have to figure out, one by one, what to do with what they've been given. Muhammad Ali's grandson fights professionally at Araneta Coliseum, honoring the 50th anniversary of the Thrilla in Manila. Layla Ali fields a comeback challenge from Claressa Shields and names her price with the confidence of a woman who knows she beat everyone she ever stood across from. Muhammad Ali Jr. launches a Parkinson's Foundation in the United Kingdom. Mike Tyson's daughter plays tennis at a world-class level with the coach who built Serena Williams. George Foreman's sons carry a name, 5 of them sharing the exact same name, and work out what it means to be that particular kind of heir. Joe Frasers' business lives on under the management of his children. Oscar de la Hoya's daughter finds her own lane in photography and media. None of these stories are finished. That's the other thing about boxing families. The sport produces people with the capacity to keep going past the point where most people stop. That's the trait that gets passed down. Not the power, not the footwork. The refusal, the absolute refusal to let the last round be the last thing that defines you. It's in Nico Ali Walsh getting back up after a split decision loss and going back to the gym. It's in Mickey Tyson dropping a debut single at 34. It's in Kalaya Ali getting married and receiving a humanitarian award in the same month. It's in Ramsey Tyson working on major films and speaking their truth publicly. It's in all of them. The children and grandchildren of men who stood in the center of a ring with the whole world watching and refused to fall. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not the belts, not the records, not the highlight reel knockouts. The thing that actually gets passed down generation after generation in these families is the ability to take a hit and keep moving. Because in boxing, that's all there ever was. The hit and what you do next. References: Muhammad Ali's 9 Children, LawyerMonthly.com, https://www.lawyermonthly.com, Stoint 2025, 3 and Muhammad Ali's 9 Children Meet the Boxing Legends' Sons and Daughters. Muhammad Ali, Wikipedia, https://and wikipedia.org when you own new 8 https://and Muhammad Ali's Children. Where are they now? Essentiallysports.com, https://story www.essentiallysports.com's news marks boxing news Muhammad Ali's Children. Where are they now? Mark Muhammad Ali's Children. Distractify.com, https://www.distractify.com's Mark Ali Children, Mark Muhammad Ali Estate. CarolinaFep.com, https://www.carolinafep.com, Poxblog Mark Black, battle coming from Muhammad Ali Estate, but it may end in a knockout. CFM, Mike Tyson's 7 Children. Newsweek.com, https://www.newsweek.com/entertainment celebrity news. Mark Tyson 7 Children, 1,986,925. All about Mike Tyson's 7 kids. Today.com, https://www.toei.com/parents. Mike Tyson Kids RCNA 17990 gone. Mike Tyson's 7 Children, Parade.com, https://parade.com/celebrities, Mike Tyson Children, Mike Tyson's Children. HelloMagazine.com, https://www.hellamagazine.com/celebrities 729,000. 744. Meet Mike Tyson's 7 kids. From his famous son to his daughter's tragic life. Mike Tyson's daughter, Exodus. TheSportster.com. https://www.thesportster.com's Mike Tyson daughter, death, Exodus tragic treadmill accident. All about Mike Tyson's 7 children. HollywoodMask.com, https://hollywoodmask.com/a all about Mike Tyson's 7 children and their lives.html. Joe Frazier Wikipedia, https://nbeckwikipedia.org wiki Joe Frazier Wikipedia, https://nbeckwikipedia.org wiki Joe Frazier. Biography, thefamouspeople.com, https://www.thefamouspeople.com. Sprayfiles, Joe Frazier, 3900.php. Joe Frazier, encyclopedia.com, https://www.encyclopedia.com. Spee Sparks Blast Pace and Games, Spa Sparts Biographies Judge Joe Frazier's. Joe Frazier's Kids, Distractify.com, https://www.distractify.com. Sploss Joe Frazier Kids. Joe Frazier and his boxing children, philstar.com, https://www.philstar.com. Spart 2011 9 2020 728,000. 682 All Family. Nico Ali Walsh, Wikipedia, https://nbetwikipedia.org swear wikiwik, Nico Ali Walsh, grokipedia.com, https://grokipedia.com/page, Nico Ali Walsh, Layla Ali, Wikipedia, https://nbetwikipedia.org swear wiki Layla Ali biography, inbedbiographykind.com https://nbedbiographykind.com/Layla Ali net worth 2025 financemonthly.com https://www.financemonthly.com/Layla Alice net worth 2025 boxing heirs fortune explored Floyd Mayweather Jr. family tree sportsjockyo.com https://sportsjockyo.com's articles/Floyd Mayweather Jr. family tree 113,000,482.html. Floyd Mayweather Sr. Wikipedia https://nbeckwikipedia.org Sweekworkways wiki Floyd Mayweather Sr. Floyd Mayweather Children Sportskeeda.com https://www.sportskeeda.com MAF Floyd Mayweather S Children All Need Know Boxing Legends Mex Family Floyd Mayweather Biography biography.com https://www.biography.com Splays Floyd Mayweather 507,718. George Foreman Death thebiglead.com https://www.thebiglead.com/10 richest boxers of all time and the wild amounts they're worth. Richest boxers of all time, justjared.com https://www.justjared.com Slate 25 Slate 12.29 the richest boxers of all time ranked by net worth.